Hello everyone, I'm Peigh and I'm back with an all-new edition of Brandstand, your weekly destination for all the latest news and views from the ad, marketing and media world. So let's get started by taking a look at what we have in store in today's episode. A rendezvous with IPG's Managing Director, Performics COO on mobile marketing, and a quick catch-up with media agency bosses. Here are the headlines of the week gone by.
McCann World Group India will take part in all Goa Fest Abbey Award categories. In a big boost for organisers, the Advertising Club and 3 A's of I, McCann has announced that it will have a token presence in all award categories of the Abbey at Goa Fest 2016 and it will attend the annual event in full swing. The move is significant as McCann has been staying away from Abbey in recent years and has been rated the most awarded Indian agency by the Gun Report in the last 3 years. Google India has unveiled a report which captures the incredible pace of internet growth that India is witnessing. The report captures how mobile is influencing and in many cases defining Indian users' first experience with the internet. The report outlines how mass adoption of mobile phones is driving adoption of newer services, becoming the primary screen for consumption of media and defining the new user experiences. As per study, mobile captured 60% share of all shopping-related queries and over 50% share of all travel-related queries. Even for YouTube, over 60% of views were now coming from mobile. In the classified space, online job listings saw revival with over 41% job-related searches coming from mobile phones. Havas Media Group has made some senior-level appointments and further strengthened its team in the West. Kunal Jamwar has rejoined the group as Managing Partner Havas Media, West and South. He was earlier with the group as Executive Director, West. Besides Kunal, the group has also appointed Chanchal Shaktawat as Vice President Planning, West. She was earlier General Manager at O&D. Global marketing communications consultancy Maxis has announced a new partnership with the IoT Bangalore Foundation for Pervasive Computing. Maxis and IoT will work together with their brands in building new products and consumer engagement solutions. Sports and leisure wear brand Adidas has moved its creative mandate in India from TBWA India to DDB Mudra. The account moved in December, but there is no official intimation from either DDBA Mudra or Adidas India. According to sources, the account will be handled out of the agency's Delhi office. It is learned that DDB Mudra is expected to come up with a high-profile multiple media campaign next month.
IPG's Managing Director Terry D. Peigh was in Mumbai last week to unveil a new research study by his network. I caught up with him for a quick chit-chat on the influence of new media and the changing nature of consumer behavior. Let's get straight into the conversation. The IPG study has been on for 6 years, and having tracked consumer decision making for so long, would you say there's a significant change in the buying decisions from a decade ago to now?
We've seen the changes on several fronts. We've seen the changes in terms of how people are valuing information. Around the world, people are increasingly, every year, valuing product information more and more. It provides them more and more confidence and satisfaction with the products, which is wonderful. We're also seeing that people are getting a lot more joy out of learning about products. India's, I think, second highest in the world on that regard. That joy often translates to advocacy. These people are showing an increased interest in actually advocating for products. But what we're seeing as well is this interest and rush to take in information and enjoy information and value information is running into this increased interest and demand really for trusted information. We know in India, people here are very concerned about getting trusted information, and India actually is the highest in the world when it comes to people relying on brand names that they trust in order to proceed further with the product. So really dramatic changes around the world.
How do you compare the habits and behavioral patterns of the Indian consumer with the Bric countries or other bigger economies like the US and the UK?
There's a great culture in learning, and obviously in this country, which is a wonderful accolade for India. And that culture and interest in learning manifests itself in a culture of wanting to share that learning with friends, which is wonderful for marketing and marketing communications people. And the other, I think, major point of distinction for Indian people is their willingness and desire and interest in finding brand names as great representatives and surrogates, if you will, for brand trust, which says to us as marketing people that we need to work very hard to establish strong brand name reputation and strong brand name affinity and positive feelings.
And would you say brand names are still relevant?
Enormously so. And actually we saw this particularly in India, where in India consumers here, more so than any other place in the world, are relying more and more on brand names and brand reputation. Why is that? Because as consumers are being challenged, are challenging marketers for trusted information, they're relying on brands and brand name reputation to be a surrogate, if you will, or a representative of that trust.
We've seen categories like mobile phones, for instance, where consumers have embraced lesser known brands, let's say like a Xiaomi, for instance. Whereas in some categories, they take time to embrace a lesser known brand. What do you think is the reason behind this?
With brands like Xiaomi, a lot of it's price. They're a very strong marketer, and they've been able to come to the market with a very low price point and bring in millions of new people, which is wonderful. Again, it's all about really democratizing information, and I think you'll continue to see that, and it's a wonderful thing for us as marketers.
Can you highlight specific insights that are dramatically more different, say in a country like US?
It's interesting when you look at the data for India, Brazil, and China. They're very different. That cluster of countries is very different than the US and for the UK. And one of the questions that we keep asking ourselves is, as this gap separates in terms of joy from learning, advocacy, interest in new product information, greater value from product information, will this gap continue to increase, or will over time, as the Indian consumer and the Chinese and the Brazilian consumer, as they become more accustomed to living in a commercial world and entering a middle class, which these countries are doing quite aggressively, will they start to equalize with the US?
Is an alert customer the result of growing awareness levels caused by electronic media? For instance, in India, somebody staying in Tier 2 or Tier 3 has the same level of awareness as somebody living in the big cities.
That really was the genesis of our research, saying that, with the explosion of the internet and the availability of more and more product information, often through electronic means, people are just getting a lot more information in, and our question was, to what extent are they enjoying it and able to process it? When we started the research back in 2009, our hypothesis was that all this information coming at people was just going to overwhelm them, that they wouldn't know what to do with it, and that they'd find it frustrating and confusing. And what we learned very, very early on, to our surprise, was that people actually have learned to cope quite well with all the information.
And has television, according to you, been the great equalizer, or is it the mobile phone?
We see a lot of cultures that are actually almost jumping over the laptop and going right from, television, radio, and print, right to mobile. It obviously, with mobile phones, provides people immediate, ready, and easy, and relatively inexpensive access to lots of product information. I mean, I live off of mine. I'm sure you live off of yours.
And how much do you think the Indian consumer gets influenced by word of mouth, social media pressure, and advertising?
The Indian consumer responds very, very well to social media and to word of mouth advertising around the world. Face-to-face advertising, friends and family communication is clearly the most powerful form of communication. That's why the marketing world enjoys, or actually is thrilled that consumers are willing to learn more and want to advocate more, because that's a very powerful channel for us. So how do we tap into that? And social media is can be a very good vehicle for us to tap into that desire to advocate.
Even as mobile phones get ubiquitous and social media becomes more and more influential, but it is still the mass media which is the most influential. So when do you see the mass media diminishing in value?
Mass media will always have value. I remember, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people were saying the internet will lead to the death of television. The internet will lead to the death of radio advertising and print advertising. Clearly that's not the case. When people are spending in the US upwards of $5 million for a 30-second commercial in the Super Bowl, TV is not dead. And for many brands, not all brands, but for many brands, TV fulfills a very, very strong role in terms of creating a high-quality image and an emotional connection that often you can't get through the internet.
Well, this was great. Thank you so much for joining us, and it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Week after week, at every possible A&M event, we hear about performance marketing and the enormous promise the mobile medium has. So, we decided to bring you an update not on the future, but on how the medium is currently being utilized and how much more it can be explored as an effective marketing tool. To talk about this, I have with me on the show Mr. Craig Greenfield, COO of Performics Worldwide. Welcome to Brandstand, Craig. You're heading Performics and you're already aware of the huge digital presence that is there in India, but the spends on it aren't really high as of now. How do you think the numbers can grow?
Digital spends here in India, what we see is a steady trend of growing increase in a mobile environment where there are plenty of opportunities to create those dynamic, personalized experiences. We see spends growing at an increased and accelerated rate in a number of categories, and that mirrors the trends that we see in other markets around the world as digital has taken off and the shift of analog dollars have moved online.
What do we see coming from you in the future? Are there any specific thrust areas for you?
We think that the application of intent is ultimately how we create very influential communications that resonate with consumers who are either unaware with our brands or they're aware, or ultimately to influence that purchase consideration. And so we are working with academic institutions to ultimately have a clinical playground in which we can explore the notion of intent and ultimately advance the body of knowledge around understanding how people make decisions so that we can optimize the decision points along that consumer journey.
If there's an area that you think marketers need to be particularly sensitive on in digital marketing, what do you think it is?
The area in which marketers should be extremely sensitive is respecting their consumers and being very authentic in how they bring their brands to those consumers. And the application of data for the use in personalization is something that we all have to be very sensitive about.
Great, let's hope marketers out there are taking note and would up their digital investments in the near future. Thank you so much for joining in with us. Last week, the India chapter of the International Advertising Association held its annual IAA retrospect and prospect session with captains of IPG, Madison and Zenith Optimedia, sharing their predictions for 2016 and also assessing the year gone by. On Brandstand, since we've highlighted these already, we caught up with Shashi Sinha, Vikram Sakhuja and Anupriya Acharya for an insightful rapid fire. Take a look. As the name suggests, the recent edition of the IAA Retrospect and Prospects was an evening well spent with industry leaders deliberating on what 2016 holds in terms of ad spends, along with a look back at the year gone by. We did a quick catch-up with IPG's Shashi Sinha, Madison's Vikram Sakhuja and Zenith Optimedia's Anupriya Acharya and caught them at their spontaneous best to do some trend spotting for us. Here's what we asked them.
Yes, definitely. I'm an optimist by nature. The country is optimist, so things will happen. Achhe din. So why not?
There are new categories, new brands, e-commerce becoming big, all of that. So it's based on all of that. It's not optimism in its own regard.
Since I'm part perpetrator, I think I'll have to agree with that. But I think it's justified. I won't say killing print, taking share from print, yes. Each medium has a role. I don't think digital is going to take 100% of the ad exp ever.
Digital is largely, when it is used by marketers, it is for, cross geographies. So it's not used as a localized medium from city to city, which is where print is showing maximum growth. So in the short run, I don't think so. I don't think they should be worried about digital. It's just a platform. They can, largely all publishers and broadcasters are content companies. And hence, they should be more worried about ensuring that they have sticky content and they can leverage digital as well. Urban demand is good, and so we expect that some of these categories which have been doing well for the last many quarters will continue to do well.
No, what will happen is not more marketers, because marketers have finite budgets. So they will spend. It's not that their budgets will go up. But there'll be a lot more, which is the point I made earlier in the panel. There are a lot more advertisers coming on. If SMEs boom, so there'll be a lot more small-scale advertisers coming on, which is happening to digital. The long tail is there. So that's what the hope is. I strongly believe, like I said, I think today broadcasters are not looking at content, they're just looking at free dish to the Doordarshan thing and they're getting the eyeballs. But in the long run, it's a huge opportunity to be tapped. I see the data, the BARC data, and I believe there's a great opportunity. It has to be a different audience altogether, different way you cut the content.
It's great that it's finally being measured, and I think that's going to give it a fillip. But I think 2017 will be the time when the rural potential will really start to burgeon.
Yes, if there's a big gap, I'd worry.
I won't say no measurement. I would say ABC has to be seen along with the IRS to really get a good combination of the full readership as well as the circulation.
Print is largely a habit, and it's not like the habits change very fast. So, you don't have to have a data updated every quarter or every, to really take decisions.
Unfortunately, and at least in the print of ours.
I would tend to agree actually, because this is one segment which has not shown much of growth in the last few years and definitely is under pressure.
Unfortunately, I think reader interest is flagging. They're neither fish nor fowl. They're somewhere caught between the supplements of the newspapers and the newspapers themselves. I think the more localization which happens in regional media, the better it is. And in a way, rural is an offset of regional media.
Regional is definitely going to grow a little faster than English and maybe even GEC Hindi.
One work is tough, but I'd say I'd be happy. It is a good business to be in at this point in time.
It's boom time, but it has to be backed up by performance. So this is the year in which marketing needs to start counting for business results.
I would say a measured optimism.
Contract Advertising's new film for Dabur Gulabari captures how girls grow up with biases and stereotypical judgments based on their looks. The film I'm Pretty Tough exposes the biases faced by teenagers with a powerful example of someone who has broken society's stereotypes to achieve superlative feats. Dettol has unveiled a TVC for its recently launched products Dettol Gold. Conceptualized by McCann, the film highlights the need of a superior antibacterial solution with the rising new age illness. Ariel has rolled out another film under its Share the Load campaign. Created by BBDO, the video encourages men to help their wives to do the laundry. The difference between the video last year and now is that the first one emphasized gender inequality, but in the current video it shows the perspective of a man, a father.
उसके डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, तुम्हारे डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, और हर उस डैड की तरफ से सॉरी जिसने कई सालों से एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया।
Taking a fresh route towards communicating their endowment policies to the consumers, LIC along with DDB Mudra Group has created new campaign with the positioning Plans Banate Raho, Zindagi Sajate Raho. With this new campaign, the brand intends to showcase its 4 different products in a single compelling story without resorting to the usual narratives of double benefits. Fast Track has launched its new campaign titled Never Have a Never Have I Ever. Created by Lowlantas, the 3 films take instances from everyday life and put a complete Fast Track spin on it. The campaign's cheeky visuals showcase how the youth are unapologetic and deal with an uncomfortable situation head-on.
That's all we have in this edition of Brandstand. Do tell us what you'd like to see on the show by writing into us at brandstand@zmedia.slgroup.com, or you can also reach out to us on Twitter. And here's hoping for an M&E friendly budget on Monday. I'll see you all next week. Take care.